Thank you very much, Cathaoirleigh, and this is a very important topic, and I know the Minister appreciates that, what was known as the July provision, which comes under a different name now, the summer school programme for all primary schools. And while I was tabling the topical this week, and I thank the Ceann Comhairle for picking the topical because it's really important, I notice and I've seen that the department has published the guidelines, and that was one of the issues I was going to raise, and I'm still raising it. I welcome that the guidelines have been issued, and I welcome that a letter has been sent out to all the principals. However, and I'll come to the good points in it, it's late in the year. I have no idea, Minister, why it's so late in the year. It creates huge problems on the ground in terms of preparation and clarity and certainty. So if the Minister could give an explanation tonight as to why it's so late coming out and give an assurance that this will be changed. In relation to the positive stuffs, positive items outlined, and they're outlined clearly in the guidelines and in the letter, and there are over, let's see, improvements in relation to 11 bullet points, including that an overseer can be appointed, preparation time will be given now. There is an additional 10 hours of paid time, and you know all this, Minister, but I just want to highlight there are positives, an additional pay for teachers, SNAs working. Now, there's a little difficulty just here. I'm not sure if I'm just being pedantic, but from the letter that went to the principals, the additional pay, teachers and SNAs working on the programme will receive an additional week's pay for each week. So an additional for each week of the programme based on their personal rate of pay. And then when we go to the guidelines, I'm not so sure it's clear, payment rates on page 15. Overseers, teachers and SNAs who work on the programme will be paid for this work based on what they are normally paid during the year, their personal rate. Now, I understand their personal rate, but from the letter I understand it's a doubling of that. So you might just clarify that. I welcome the other points that the application form is going to be simplified, there'll be flexibility and so on. Now, my difficulty with this is the core number of pupils in special schools and special classes who are really being left out in relation to the summer schools programme. And I know the Minister might disagree with me on this, so let me just kind of go into this a little bit. The reason that the July programme came in the first place wasn't proactive from any department or any government. It came from a High Court action back in the 90s, the late 90s. And that provided, arising from that, the department had to provide a summer, well, it could have been called anything, but it had to provide for a system that allowed children with very special complex needs not to be deprived of an education for a long period during the summer because it was too long and they regressed. And they had to go to the High Court to get that basic recognition, and out of that came the July provision. And now, I understand there's a review underway, and that's one specific question in relation to the review. It's underway since 2019. Where is it? Because it's very important that we see that review. Now, if I just go through some of the figures that's been pointed out to me, and they're truly shocking in relation to the number of children in special schools and special classes not being in a position to avail of the July provision because the schools aren't providing it, because it's on a voluntary basis, and if the schools don't opt in, then there is no service. Now, what I want to look at here in relation to the figures that various people on the ground have got through freedom of information, and I would add there that there should be no need for this. A review should be carried out each year and an analysis provided of what was the uptake of the July provision, what was the feedback in relation to how well it operated, and most importantly, for those that weren't in a position to avail of it, why not? So that each year the department can learn and more certainty can be brought to bear in relation to, I'm going to keep calling it the July provision because...
Mr. Joseph Madigan.
Thank you very much. Was that 4 minutes? Sorry, I didn't.
It was.
Was it?
And a little generous.
Was it? Oh, Lord, I beg your pardon. Okay. Yeah, I beg your pardon.
And 23 seconds.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Connolly, and you're correct, this is a very important topic, and I'm delighted that the Ceann Comhairle did put it in for today. Just to reiterate, first of all, I suppose the importance and the aims of the summer provision. So we know obviously that it builds confidence for children, supports pupils to re-engage with education. It increases their motivation, it promotes well-being, and for those children that are key transition stages, it helps to ensure that they can move on to planned educational placements next September along with their peers. Just to specifically answer, before I speak maybe perhaps more generally around summer provision, to try and answer some of your questions. First of all, around the timing of the announcements, which, as you know, it was announced on the 4th of May, which I think was yesterday or the day before. In any event, this is perhaps the earliest time the summer provision has been announced, more than any other year. And you may or may not be aware that I set up a consultative group, a special educational consultative forum. They met today with a variety of different stakeholders to discuss issues pertaining to special education. But just to answer another question which ties in with it, is around the review. So there was an inspectorate review of the summer provision, which was done last year, and it was provided. That report was provided and shared, Deputy, with stakeholders, and it was used to inform the summer programme. So we wanted to wait until that was completed, because obviously, go to another one of your questions was around the take-up and the participation in the summer provision. And we want to make sure, because all 4,000 schools are eligible for this particular summer provision, we want to encourage as many as possible to engage in it and to do that. And you outlined yourself some of the incentivisations that we've used to get schools to participate, and some of that was based on the feedback that we received from that review. So obviously the funding, the preparation time, faster payments for the staff, etc. And you also mentioned, I think, around the pay. So just to clarify that, it is a week's pay plus a week extra for the staff. And again, that is a strong incentive because obviously, in fairness to the staff, the SNAs and the teachers, they have worked considerably over the last number of years during the pandemic and subsequent to that. And we don't want them to be too exhausted, but we do want them at the same time to avail of the summer provision, because we know how much it means to children and to their parents. And so that's why we're trying to do that. We've also provided school transport. So we have special transport services. If that service isn't available, they will be given a grant, or the school itself can organise its own transport so that we can get children to avail of it. And there are, I suppose, 4 or 5 different types. We have the inclusion programme in primary school, that's 2 to 3 weeks. We have special classes and special school programmes. We have the DESH as well. Let's not forget, this is about disadvantaged children as well. And so also Ukrainian children will be able to avail of this programme for the very first time. And I think the schools are very excited to be able to offer that to Ukrainian children this year. And I just lastly, if you don't mind, to mention that there is enhanced funding. I have another 14 seconds.
I was just flagging it.
Yeah,
10 to flag.
there is enhanced funding for special schools in recognition of the complexity of the needs for special schools, because they are the children with the most complex needs.
Any comment?
I'll speak very fast this time in relation to my 2 minutes. Children with complex special needs, the letters I have is they feel abandoned. They are absolutely at their wits' end because the take-up for the July provision is very, very low. I don't have the time to go into the figures, but it's a very finite number of students that are in special classes and special schools. It is not beyond our capability to provide the service for them for 4 weeks during the summer, and that is not happening. So let me look at the figure alone. It's less than 8,500 in terms of special classes, 8,108 children special schools and 8,500 approximately in special classes. The number attending the July provision is minimal, Minister. I have the figures in front of me, and what I'm asking you is to recognise that. Let the parents feel that they're being heard. Yes, I know you've set up a consultative forum, and I welcome that. But I've asked you, the review that was started in 2019, has it been completed? Will it be published? Is it available? In relation to the deficits being pointed out by the people on the ground, for whom the July provision was set up, they're losing out. You know that, and Minister Rappett knows that. They're on the ground. They're absolutely at their wits' end from the time the school closes till it opens. They had to go to the High Court in the first place, and now the percentage take-up of it is impossible. And what you've said in your guidelines and the letter to the principal is that they'll be able to do it at home. This is not possible. They need to go out. Summer camps and all the other things that are available are not available to these children with complex special needs. I know it personally and professionally on the ground. I'm sure everybody here does. And so, 17 seconds.
I'm just flagging your time.
We lose a few seconds when you do that, and we lose our train of thought. In any event, this has to be taken on board by the department. And what provision will be made on a long-term basis for next year? The people on the ground have made very sensible suggestions in relation to how to deal with this. But it's bordering on insulting, not you, Minister, but for a letter to go out to say they can avail of it at home. It is not possible. They need special provision for 4 weeks. And there was an underspend last year. I'll finish up on the underspend. A huge underspend, thank you, Chair, in relation to the July provision. What's happened to that money?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. And thankfully, we're not back in the 1990s, and there's been significant work done since then in relation to this, and this is together with the COVID Learning and Support Scheme, the supplementary scheme. But I totally agree with you, and I'm ad idem with you on one thing, which is that the families really need it, and they need the respite for their children and to bring them on. Just to mention specifically, and we did give some of this information as well to the children, the Ombudsman for Children. I mean, most of the children in autism, with autism, for example, in special schools and special classes, some of them are no longer in those classes, they're in mainstream. So obviously there's more children now in mainstream than there was in the past. So in those circumstances, the provision of support isn't about the location, it's about the level of need. And that's really critical. And as I said, there's enhanced supports for special schools and enhanced funding for them. Guidance has gone to schools to say that, and which was based, by the way, on engagement with management bodies and with unions, that they should prioritise those with the most complex needs. That guidance has been very clear coming from the department to schools, and schools can take as many as they have the capacity to take. There's no difficulty with that. That's really important. As I said, there was a review done by the inspectors, which is fed into this year as well. And we never want to take away from one category to the other. It's, as I said, it's based on need, not on location. And just as a statistic, and we have lots of statistics, there's been a 64% increase in special schools and special classes from 2019 to 2021. So we are making progress, and we use the feedback this year so that we could make it a more streamlined process, so that we could make it as attractive as we possibly can. We've doubled the funding from 20 million to 40 million, which is 100% increase, to try and get schools to voluntarily participate in the scheme for the benefit of the parents and the children.